welcome to Crime in Court. My name is Heather, and as you can see from the thumbnail of this episode of Innocence Lost, which is my wrongful conviction series, we're going to be talking about Cornelius Dupree and Anthony Masingill. The gentleman in all white is Cornelius, and the one wearing the plaid shirt is Anthony. All right, so this is a case of being misidentified by the victim, and then therefore two innocent men serve 30 plus years in prison because of a misidentification. So we're going to read all about it in 1 second, but before we do, I really want to ask you guys for a favor. So, one of the first stories on my channel of, of this in the series of the wrongful conviction series, I did a story on Marcellus Williams. He was given the DP for a crime he did not commit. There is DNA evidence that exonerates him, and yet he is still sitting in prison. And just recently, this is breaking as of the 5th, June 5th. Um, the Supreme Court has set an execution date for Marcellus Williams, and he is innocent. DNA evidence supports his innocence, and yet they just set an execution date. So I'm asking you for your help to go to innocenceproject.org, and it's going to take you like the first page. You're going to see an article about this, and you can click right on there. So innocenceproject.org. And the first thing you do is sign a petition to stop his execution. And you can also share this story on social media, which I will be doing. And also, they make it really easy for you. There's a social media kit. You can click on it and download all of the images. They come up in a Google Drive. So you can download them and use them for your own social media. So that's what they're asking of you, and they're asking you to use your voice um, to make some change in our judicial system, in our criminal justice system. We need some reform. We need people who are innocent sitting in prison, but they're innocent, and there's DNA that exonerates them, and yet we're still keeping them in prison, and now we're setting execution dates. This is probably like his third or fourth execution date. I can't remember now. I'll put in the description below a link to his story so you guys can check it out for yourself. Um, and also read up on it on innocenceproject.org. They have information as well. So today, now let's get into our story for today. Please hit that like button before we begin. All right, so we are going to talk about Cornelius Dupree and Anthony Masingill, and um, yeah, I'll just get started. All right, so this is Cornelius. Cornelius was exonerated on April 4th, 2011, after spending more than 30 years in prison for an R-end robbery that he didn't commit. So here is the crime. So it's not just him, it's Anthony Masingill too. This is not, they don't have his picture in here, so unfortunately it's I'm going to read most of it off of Cornelius's story, but it's going to give us information from both of them. All right, so the crime. On November 23rd, 1979, a young couple stopped at a Dallas liquor store to purchase cigarettes. A 26-year-old female stayed outside while her male friend entered the store. As she used a nearby payphone, she noticed two African American men approaching the payphone next to her. Upon returning to the vehicle, her friend was held at gunpoint by one of the men and forced into the driver's seat as the gunmen climbed into the back seat. The second gunman forcibly entered the passenger seat alongside the female victim. The male was ordered to drive on the highway while the perpetrators robbed both victims of their money. Shortly afterward, they commanded the male victim to pull off the highway and exit the vehicle. At that moment, the female attempted to escape but failed as one of the perpetrators pulled her back into the vehicle. The perpetrator stopped in a nearby park and each arred the female victim as the other held her at gunpoint. After the R's were committed, they allowed her to leave the vehicle and threatened to end her life if she went to the police. They also stole her rabbit fur coat. The victim fled to the closest road and collapsed unconscious on the shoulder. I cannot even imagine how horrific of an experience that must have been. And the fact that she like even got herself away and ran to a road to collapse on the shoulder of the road, I mean, even that like takes some strength and courage. All right, maybe not. All right, sorry, I had to pause because my dogs were being loud. All right, so a passing patrol car spotted her, and the officer revived her and brought her to meet the victim male at the police station. Like, why didn't you take her to the hospital? That's where they should have taken her. The investigation and identification. Exactly 1 week after the attack, Cornelius Dupree and Anthony Masingill were stopped by police as they walked along a street near the site of the incident. Near the site of the incident. So they're just walking along the street 1 week later, probably having no knowledge of the fact that this even took place. I mean, I'm assuming they had no knowledge of this and they're just walking by. And so police think it's them. Police claimed they stopped them because they fit the general description of two other black men who were suspected in a separate SA case. Both men were searched, and although Dupree was unarmed, Masingill had a handgun roughly similar to the one described in the recent attack. Both Dupree and Masingill were taken into custody and their photos were submitted for an identification lineup. Although the male victim did not identify them in the photo array, the female victim picked both Dupree and Masingill when presented with the same photos. And this makes me wonder if it had anything to do with some kind of law enforcement influence, because well, what are the odds that she would pick the guys that the cops think are the guys? You know, what are the odds of that? So later in the investigation, police showed the photos to two women who worked at the store where the perpetrators tried to sell the fur coat, and both women did not identify either Massengill or Dupree. So that's interesting. Forensic analysts collected evidence from the victim's R kit examination, including swabs, hair combings, cuttings, and BLOOD reference samples. The Southwest Institute of Forensic Sciences in Dallas reported finding fluids in the smear that they had, this slide provided by the victim, indicating that the presence of this male's fluid and confirming the victim's recollection that one or two attackers had finished during the R. I'm trying so hard not to get stricken from. It's so hard to talk about this stuff without YouTube getting mad at you. The ABO BLOOD type found in the samples matched that of the victim, and therefore analysts could not determine that the perpetrator's um, serology tests matched. Okay, so having gone through that paragraph, that was difficult. All right, so the trial. At trial, both victims identified Dupree and Massengill as the perpetrators. The male victim explained his failure to previously identify either man by claiming that his vision was slightly impaired during his initial identification. Okay. I think that's prosecutorial something or other, overreach, trying to get the victims to ID these individuals. Significantly, during the female victim's cross-examination in the identification hearing, she misidentified a photo of Massengill as Dupree, despite the fact that both defendants were present in the courtroom at the time. Additionally, at the time of the attack, The victim was not wearing her usual prescription glasses to correct her nearsightedness. So neither one of the people were wearing their glasses apparently in their car. They're just going around driving blind. All right, so the prosecutor argued the case based on the photo identification of both victims. Dupree's testimony relied on the cross-racial misidentification defense and his assertion that he was not involved in the crime or the attempted sale of the victim's coat. On April 3rd, 1980, the jury found Cornelius Dupree guilty of aggravated robbery, and sentenced him to 75 years in prison. After so he got 75 years for the robbery, for stealing their money and the coat, not for what they did to, they didn't do it, but not for the crimes against the woman, the female victim, not for those crimes, but just for stealing the coat. I just want to point that out. 1980s, you could R women all you wanted, but don't steal their fur coats and try to resell it. Then you'll get 75 years in prison. What? Probably would have gotten like so much less time for the R. All right. After the conviction, the prosecutor filed a motion to dismiss prosecution on the R charges because, according to the state, a R conviction would not have increased his sentence and continuing the trial would be unnecessarily expensive. Exactly. So they got him on the robbery charges, which would have gotten him way more time than the R charges against the female victim. So they just didn't even bother to really try him on those charges because they wanted to get him on the 75 years in prison. They wanted the max sentence for him. So post-conviction appeals and exonerations. Dupree filed 3 petitions for a writ of habeas corpus, and each time he was denied a new trial. He was never eligible for parole because he would have had to admit his guilt and enroll in a offender program, something he admittedly refused or adamantly refused to do, which I would too if I was innocent. I wouldn't want that label on me if I didn't do those crimes. You know what I'm saying? In 2006, the Dallas County District Attorney's Office cooperated with the Innocence Project and conducted a search for the physical evidence presented in Dupree's trial. A year later, the forensics lab informed the DA's office that they were only able to recover the victim's hair combings and cuttings. Evidence from the swabs and other samples had been lost or destroyed. In 2009, the district attorney's office agreed to permit the Innocence Project to conduct DNA testing, and the remaining evidence was sent to the Forensic Science Associates lab in California. The lab discovered a large quantity of cells on fluid that remained on the hair cuttings and performed an STR DNA testing to analyze the biological material. Forensic analysts found 2 male profiles and compared them with the samples taken from both defendants. On July 30th, 2010, the lab issued a report on the evidence which conclusively excluded both Dupree and Masingill as both sources of the DNA found on the victim's hair samples. According to the court report, both the robbery and the R were part of a single isolated incident committed by the same 2 perpetrators. The district attorney's office agreed that the DNA evidence established Dupree's actual innocence, and he was granted habeas corpus relief by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. He and his longtime girlfriend married the day after his release. Well, that is good news. All right, so over here on Dupree, no, on Massengill's side. Oh, here is interesting too. It says as of 2012, Dupree had received 2.4 million in state compensation, almost 2.5. In 2014, Masingill, with the support of the Dallas County District Attorney's Conviction Integrity Unit, filed a state petition for a writ of habeas corpus seeking to vacate his conviction in the case in which Dupree's conviction had already been vacated. But in September 2014, the Texas Court of the Criminal Appeals vacated his conviction for the 1979 robbery and ordered a new trial. The appeals court also ordered a new sentencing for Masingill in his separate R robbery case because the conviction in the case with Dupree had been used to enhance his sentence in that case. On October 17th, 2014, the prosecution dismissed the 1979 robbery charge against Masingill, but he remained in prison serving a sentence for the other crime for which he was convicted. So I'm not sure what the other crime was that he was convicted. Was it for having a firearm, I'm assuming? But that wouldn't give you 70 years for having a, would it? For having a firearm? I don't know how many years you would get for an unregistered firearm. But according to this, it said, but it was last updated in 2022. So I don't know. Maybe he's been out since. If anybody does know, that would be great if they could give us some updates on that. Because it just says he remains in prison for the other crime for which he was convicted. Masingill sought compensation from the state of Texas for his wrongful conviction, but the claim was denied, which, oh, sorry, that was really hard for you guys to read. It's hard for me to read too, don't worry. Yeah, so Masingill sought compensation from the state of Texas, but the claim was denied. So isn't that interesting? Because he's still incarcerated, he's not getting any kind of compensation, but because Dupree's not incarcerated, because all of his were overturned, his wrongful conviction was overturned, and he's not still incarcerated, he's getting 2.5 million. But the guy who you also wrongfully convicted doesn't get anything because he's sitting in prison right now. I don't think that's fair. I think he's still wrongfully convicted, and I don't know what his other charges were that he is convicted for, but I'd like to know. And has he done his time yet? Like, can he come out now? They were very young when they were um, incarcerated. So how much time did he actually serve? Dupree served 31 years. He was served to 75 or sentenced to 75. And it all because of eyewitness misidentification, which, like I said, could have easily been law enforcement in the victim's ear telling her, well, I think it was these guys. Are you sure it wasn't these guys? Because I think it's these guys. Happens all the time. And then you've got the people changing their statements, like the male victim who never identified them in the first place, but then in court he identifies them. This is also part of, bad memory. Over time, your memories change and evolve, and if you already have these people ID'd, your mind starts to think, well, maybe it was them. Or if your girlfriend ID'd them, maybe it was them. So it's easy for misidentification. Very, very easy. And if that's all you have in a case, you cannot go by that because people's memory can be um, influenced, especially by law enforcement, by prosecutors, the DA's office, all sorts of things go into these trials to persuade people to remember things a certain way. And it's effective. It can happen very easily where, oh no, I didn't say it was them at first, but now that I think about it, it was them. Yeah, I'm pretty sure my memory is accurate and it was them. Well, wouldn't you think that their memory is more accurate at the time when they didn't choose them? You know, it's just you have to have more concrete evidence. You can't just arrest someone because somebody identified them. You need to have actual concrete proof. I guess I guess it was enough that there was a gun involved or firearm that was similar but they don't know. 'Cause how do they know? Anyways, good thing that Dupree is exonerated. Um, I hope one day Anthony Massengill is able to find some comfort and um, some time outside of the prison walls too, because whatever he didn't deserve the amount of time that he spent. I bet. And really quickly, I wanted to leave you off with this last video. Whoops, hold on one second. Okay, better. Sorry, I don't like all that other stuff. I gotta block it out because it's too distracting. All right, so we're going to watch a real quick 2-minute clip of um, Dupree, Cornelius Dupree, talking about. Well, it's a news clip, so they'll introduce him.
It was a day 30 years overdue for 51-year-old Cornelius Dupree.
You're free to go. Thank you very much.
Dupree was officially declared innocent today by a Dallas judge. He was wrongly convicted of the 1979 robbery of a young couple and accused of raping the woman at gunpoint. The female victim identified him from a photo lineup. He was convicted by an all-white jury and sentenced to 75 years in prison.
I really kind of believe that the system was like, you're innocent to proven guilty. But going through that process, I see it was just the opposite, that I was guilty to proven innocent.
Dupree appealed.
Stop that right there. Guilty till proven innocent. And that, my friends, is what I kind of want to leave you guys on. Because on that note, so our society has somehow flipped to think that they are guilty until proven innocent. If someone is arrested, they're automatically guilty. We think that, and we just go along with whatever the media is telling us. And obviously, that person was arrested for some reason, so they must have done it, and the system works, and it's just moving along the way it's supposed to. But that's not how it's supposed to be. We, the people, need to be involved in this. We need to know what our government is doing. We need to see it with our eyes, and we need to speak up. We need to speak up when we don't like something. So that is a huge, huge point of contention with me, is that, um, yeah, we've become a guilty until proven innocent society, and I can't stand it.
Well, I really kind of believe that the system was like, you're innocent to proven guilty. But going through that process, I see it was just the opposite, that I was guilty to proven innocent.
Dupree appealed his conviction 3 times from prison and lost every time. He was repeatedly denied parole because he wouldn't admit to being a sex offender, refusing to admit to a crime everyone now knows he didn't commit.
But the thing of it is, I never gave up hope. The hope is what kept me going.
After enlisting the help of the Innocence Project, defense attorneys discovered authorities had preserved DNA evidence from the rape. That evidence was tested and determined Dupree was not involved.
And we know what went wrong here. It was bad identification procedures, and we know how to fix it. We've got to learn something from these cases. Otherwise, shame on all of us.
The state of Texas has had 41 DNA-based exonerations since 2002, 21 in Dallas County, in large part because the district attorney here has made setting the innocent free a priority.
We need to do something in the state of Texas, in this country, to make sure that this never happens again.
Yes.
For Cornelius Dupree, justice came too late to shorten his sentence. He was paroled last year. Today, he has a new wife and a new life.
What didn't happen has happened. It's in the past, and in order for me to get my life together, I have to forgive.
Dupree could receive $2.4 million tax-free from Texas as compensation and will now live not as an ex-con, but as a comfortable, innocent man.
And he should.
Don Teague, CBS News, Dallas.
You took 31 years of his life away. He shouldn't have worry left in the world after that, money-wise at least, financially. You guys took 31 years of his life because bad policing, bad investigation work, whatever it was. Whatever it was, it was so important to get that conviction for these 2 gentlemen who didn't even do the crime. It just infuriates me. On that note, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any wrongful conviction stories that you would like me to discuss or look into or talk about, if you have any suggestions regarding cases, I would love to hear it. If you know anyone, if you are a wrongfully convicted individual who's been exonerated and would like to tell your story, reach out to me. You can email me at crimeandcourtchannel@gmail.com, and I would love to hear from you. So, on that note, thank you guys so much for watching and take care. Have a good one. Bye now.
If you've been impacted by a true crime and would like your story told in your own words, or if you or someone you know has been wrongfully convicted or accused of a crime, please write to crimeincourtchannel@gmail.com and tell us your real true crime encounters. Thanks for watching.